It's been a week since Israel began bombing the Gaza Strip. The casualty toll is up to over 420 dead, 1,300 injured. Israel continues to amass ground troops and armament along Gaza's border. Palestinians in both the occupied territories and in Israel have been reacting to this attack. To understand the significance of this reaction, we spoke to Jesse Rosenfeld, freelance journalist based in Ramallah and Tel Aviv. Jesse, you've just got back from Ramallah in the West Bank. Can you walk us through what's going on there?
The West Bank has sort of been shaken to the core. There's really a popular sentiment of both anger and frustration at Israel and at the Palestinian Authority. Since the bombings began, there's been a 3-day general strike across the West Bank, which involved stores closing all their doors, no sort of public street life apart from demonstrations that took place in all major cities, as well as towns across the West Bank and Jerusalem. Riots have broken out at checkpoints across the West Bank, and riots in East Jerusalem too. There's also been the spread of riots and demonstrations through Palestinian Israeli villages and towns and cities across Israel's 1949 territory.
Does this mean Hamas's popularity in the West Bank is on the rise?
There is certain potential for that. The PA has definitely been very worried about it. Solidarity demonstrations across the West Bank that took place on Sunday, the PA actually cracked down on the demonstrations. For example, in Ramallah, there was a mass demonstration of thousands of people that started to march. And when some Hamas flags appeared in the demonstration, the PA was feeling incredibly threatened by it. In Hebron, a Palestinian that was demonstrating was shot by the PA. In Bethlehem, when Palestinians marched from the Dheisheh refugee camp, there were refugees from Dheisheh through Bethlehem. They were actually blocked by Palestinian Authority forces before they could actually get to where the Israeli army was stationed at the checkpoint. And as a result, they actually received the barrage of stones that were being reserved for the army. It's kind of a humorous image of chucking stones backwards and forwards, but it really demonstrates a sort of torn identity that a lot of the Palestinian Authority forces have, where they're resenting what the Palestinian Authority is doing in its inability to really confront Israel, its unwillingness to, and it's playing a divisive politics between Gaza and the West Bank. However, they are still fulfilling their job as security forces to Mahmoud Abbas and the Palestinian Authority.
What does it look like on the streets in Israel, in Tel Aviv, for example?
Tel Aviv's a bubble. I mean, it was interesting. I was in a cafe writing a comment piece about everything that's been going on in the West Bank and Gaza earlier today, and people were pretty much ignoring the war. Having coffee, having wine, chatting about their own personal lives over lunch. I mean, there have been demonstrations in Tel Aviv by the Israeli left, and especially the radical left. The demonstration in Tel Aviv, which was actually impressive, only had about 600, 700 people. There really is a strong sense of bubble. Even though missiles are getting closer and closer, Katyushas that were fired from Gaza hit Beersheba, and the day before hit Ashdod.
Many have linked the timing of this attack with the upcoming Israeli elections, specifically with Ehud Barak, Olmert's Minister of Defense and leader of the Labour Party, suggesting that he is using this attack for political gain. What do you think?
The attack happening right now has everything to do with the elections. Barak and the Labour Party have basically been collapsing and floundering. Shas, earlier in the election campaign, lashed out at Labour, claiming that Barak would act far more quickly if there were missiles falling on central Israel or Tel Aviv, rather than just falling on the south. So basically what Barak has done is seen an opportunity in this attack on Gaza as an advantage for the Labour Party to try and make a statement that Labour comes to the defense of Israeli citizens everywhere and is actually the most effective in defending Israel. It's also using anti-Palestinian sentiment in order to bolster Labour's own potential, at least raising their seat count, if not trying to form the government. It's one that seems to have, over the past couple days, had a positive effect on the Labour Party, the attack on Gaza, that is. It's also not out of context for Barak. I mean, he's known here as being a violent and explosive politician.
In spite of this attack, Bibi is still ahead in the polls. His party, Likud, is known as more right-wing. Do you think this means a move to the right for Israel?
Based on the kind of slate that he's got, or his list of candidates, despite the fact that he's tried to marginalize the most right-wing and the most nationalist, he will have a very right-wing government. And so what you'll see is a far more aggressive and unapologetic Israeli policy that won't use the nuanced strategy of, well, expanding occupation using the language of peace. We can also see in the rhetoric of the elections in terms of developing a highly militaristic and highly anti-Palestinian sentiment.
Noor Odeh of Al Jazeera reported on Sunday that, and I quote, during an Israeli election year, a hardline position towards Palestinians has always won more seats, making the timing particularly risky for Hamas, unquote. So what about Hamas? Did they not foresee Israel's actions?
Hamas was trying to get a better deal in a ceasefire negotiation. Their main reason for ending it was because Israel didn't end its siege of Gaza. That was the main conditions for Hamas entering the ceasefire. They've clearly stated in their own PR and media that if Israel invades with ground troops, they'll turn this into another Lebanon war. And with their tens of thousands of guerrilla fighters that are well trained, that itself could completely shift the election in an entirely different direction.
With all these Israeli ground forces now amassing along the border, what do you think is going to happen next?
They may very well try a ground invasion in this election and just try and bomb Gaza a lot more before they do it, in the hope of destroying a lot of Hamas's resistance infrastructure. There was assessments that Hamas had about 20,000 guerrillas. The Shabak and Israeli security services, in their recent analysis of the situation, said, and are trying to prepare the public for heavy Israeli casualties. However, it will have very strong political ramifications once Israeli troops start dying.
This is the sort of thing we can build right now without anyone else's permission from the government or from the business community. It's the power's in our hands.
If we're not going to sleepwalk into more wars and into environmental disaster, we think we need to start with a television news network that won't bow to pressure and has the courage to seek facts. And that means independent economics. And that's why we need you.
Real hope means facing a complex reality. Your tax-deductible donation makes it possible. Please contribute. Visit therealnews.com.